What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. Please welcome Ian MacGregor, a pioneering entrepreneur behind companies like Northwest Refining, Enhance Energy, and Hydrogen Naturally. With a lifelong dedication to creating his own path, Ian's adventurous spirit and business philosophies have led him to remarkable feats, and he's not done yet. Ian, thanks so much for being here today.
Okay, well, looks like it's going to be fun. Let's get going.
Where are we?
We're at my place out west of the city, so it's actually my mom and dad's place. They bought it here in the 70s, and then I built my place out here on the same land they had. Yeah.
Incredible. And all of this behind you, can you give me a little bit of context as to the museum and how it came to be?
So, my dad worked in a machine shop, and he was in charge of selling the scrap. And so on Saturday mornings, he would work every Saturday morning. I'd go to work with him. And the first thing we'd do on Saturday morning is we'd go around to all the scrap dealers in the city and see who would pay the highest price. And because they were all trying to make friends with my dad to get the scrap, because barbers had good scrap, I could take whatever I wanted. They just let me take whatever a kid could pick up and carry. So I started collecting stuff, like anything. It would be a speedometer, or it could be something out of a car, whatever I could pick up and carry. I'd pick it up, take it home, and take it apart, and probably never put it back together again. So, but I just had this collecting kind of mentality that I think grew out of all that. So that's what this is. It's just stuff I collected over my life. And I sold everything about, 25 years ago, and I had all this junk in the junkyard, and I decided I better fix it up, because if I don't, somebody else is going to melt it down. So the start of this thing was, let's get the stuff fixed up and let's display it somehow. And it's underground because the place is, I think, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And there were getting to be too many buildings here, and every time we built a building, it was worse than it looked the last time. So I decided, no more buildings above ground. We're going to put everything that we do in the future is going to be below ground so you can't see it. So that's how it came to be. Incredible.
And you have so much incredible machinery and so much weight and so much metal down here. How did you get it all down here?
Oh, we got a crane. yeah, and we, a lot of the stuff was so big, we put it in here before the roof went on. So, the story I tell about collectors is, you're a collector, your kids are thinking, what's my dad collecting all this crap for? I'm just not interested in it. So then, usually when you have, when the dad conks out, you have a sale, and all the stuff gets sold. So I made my stuff so you can't get it out.
What do your kids think about that?
They haven't said anything.
Awesome. It's all machinery, and I understand you're an engineer. How did that come about?
So I'm an engineer because my mom, when I was a kid, I could fix motorcycles good. So, I can fix anything. If it's broken, I can probably fix it. If it's, mechanical for sure, not computers, but everything else, I could probably figure out how it works and fix it. So when I was a kid, I started fixing bicycles, and then I could fix motorcycles okay. And then my mom has decided by the time when I was born, my mom decided I was going to university. She just didn't know what. Because I could fix motorcycles, she decides I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. So, obvious, that's what I did. You did what my mom said.
Good man. It's probably a great idea.
She said it softly, but repeatedly.
Awesome. Was it clear, based on your desire to fix things as a child, that was the path, or did you ever kind of explore other avenues?
I don't know. I would say I was a kid that was difficult to educate. Like, I can memorize books really fast. Don't show me the same book twice, because I've figured out what I want to learn in there, and I've learned it already. And so I found school really, really boring. And I was always getting bad marks because it was just like, this isn't interesting and it's going too slow. And so I think I could have ended up being a mechanic in a service station or something like that, but I ended up on this path because my mom made me.
Fair enough. So school and engineering and collecting that whole time, and then a serial entrepreneur, some might say.
Yeah, so I've never had a job in my life except for summer jobs. Always made my own work. I think probably I was smart enough to figure out I wouldn't be a very good employee. I couldn't work for other people very effectively. And if someone was making money off me, I'd always be thinking, how come they get to make money off my efforts? So that made me an even worse an employee. And so I've always worked for myself. Started when I was in university rented a double garage and borrowed money from my dad to build a machine, or to buy the machines for Machine Stop, and started building stuff, and been doing different variants of that ever since.
Right on. And the work that you're doing now, I mean, it seems like we talked a little bit off camera about your philosophy on business and then your hiatus and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, I'm old enough now to be able to afford to do it. I have a 3-step business plan, and the first step, before you can consider any other steps, is the first thing you have to do is the world going to be a better place because you did what you're doing or not? And if you can't pass that test, you can't proceed to step 2. If you can pass that test, then step 2 is, are the people that you're going to do it with this? And I always work with small groups of people who are really highly motivated, really smartest people you're ever going to meet, and fun to be around. If the people aren't going to be fun to be around when it gets bad, and it's going to get bad, when you do these things, it's unknowable when you start. You've got an idea what you're going to do, it's more or less unknowable. Are the people that you're going to be on that journey with, are they going to be fun to be around? Are they going to be annoying when the chips are down? And then the third thing is, can you make an unconscionable amount of money doing this? That's sequential. You can't look at the money first. You have to go through the steps, but at the end, you have to have the profit motive, or you can't do these things.
Yeah, awesome. And so you've founded and been at the helm of multiple companies, but every time you have a process in between. What does that look like?
Yeah, so, usually, first time I did it, I went broke, so I lost everything. I didn't have any money. Bank took my car. I had to ride the bus home from the final meeting with the bank, so I lost everything. And then we started over again. We started building small gas plants because we knew how to do that well. And we were successful in the small gas plant business, and somebody bought us out, and we had a bunch of money after that. So that time I wasn't smart enough. I just went right, I sort of kind of half retired, but I didn't really, I'm not someone who can be retired. That's not a desirable state of existence for me. So I kind of half retired because I didn't really know, I never had any money before. So now I had money, and I could retire if I wanted to, but I didn't, after a while I figured I didn't want to. But it wasn't a sort of thoughtful process. It was just like you're in it and you're thinking, well, maybe I want to buy a Ferrari. And my wife says, well, if you buy a Ferrari, you can't live here anymore. So there are a bunch of those things that you didn't do, and but it was random. So then we started something else. It turned out okay. We sold it later, and I'm describing sort of 5-year slices. So we describe it, we sell the thing, get a bunch more money. This time I think, I know from the earlier experience it was close enough to the next one. I don't want to do that. I got to think about what I'm doing, and I get kind of cranky if I'm not making something. So I decided, well, I'll just take some time off and make something, and because I had all this money, I just can do whatever I want, so I make something. And in that process, I learned I want to have those periods of time between careers, and what I want to do in that thing is build something, but concentrate on beauty, not the cost of the thing. So most of the things that I build are completely constrained by cost and how much it takes to build and how inefficient they are and all those kind of questions. And then what I try and do is separate I'll call it my retired life from that. My retired life is I'm trying to build something that's really cool, really beautiful, really, when people see it, they're thinking, wow, how'd they do that? And so for me, it's like that process can't be constrained by cost. If cost enters into it, then you compromise and you don't end up with something where it's really cool at the end. So I separate my life into those pieces, and I'm lucky enough to have had a bunch of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned in there at the beginning bankruptcy, and I think that's super fascinating. I think a lot of people that go through that, especially in their earlier in their career, it would be a deterrent. They would feel like they don't want to proceed, or maybe they just go get a normal job, or whatever the case may be. How did that turn into a motivation to you to continue?
I was prepared in my life by my parents. They were really careful with me, I think, and I think what my life is about, there's no shame in failure. There's only shame in not trying your hardest. And so I never thought that I wouldn't be unsuccessful. I went broke, and I thought, well, try again. You'll be okay. Like I never thought that the next time would be another bankruptcy. I never considered it. I just thought, oh, this is a really cool idea. Let's work like hell and try and convert it into something of some substance. And we did okay at that. So I never really thought. I never thought about falling down. I always thought about standing up. Yeah.
Right. Specific to the museum, obviously, you have a massive passion for collecting and displaying. What does the museum look like? Like, is it open to the public? How do you share this with other people?
Not open to the public. It's open to people that have a legitimate interest in what's in here, and so people who make stuff, welcome. People who design stuff, people think about stuff. So people like that are welcome, doesn't matter what group they are. Lots of people like in a car club, they would show up out here because they're interested in stuff, and I'm interested in meeting them because in every group like that, there'll be some guy that's like off the charts, strange, but very creative. So I'm interested in meeting those guys. Try and use it for educational purposes. So SAIT comes, engineers come sometime. Little school kids come sometimes because there's more physical things here. Most of the world that we experience educationally now is non-physical. It's all electronic and it's on a screen or it's something. But you don't really realize that there's stuff around in the world that you have to figure out how to work. And so sometimes somebody gets an idea of that from out here. So I'm trying to use it as a resource for that. And then when I started with this, I had the idea. Engineers used to really be, engineers used to be different. They used to be commercial. There was no engineers, very few engineering consultants. There were engineers that made stuff, that did stuff, that some of them turned into be commercial beings. But they took the risk and the reward of the thing that they made. And we kind of evolved to this place where no, engineers now are consultants. When I have this special thing, then I call them up. And so everything that's in here would have the memory of somebody that was either an engineer or an engineer-like person. He would have made it, he would have been concerned about how it looked. It wasn't just what it did. It was like, how does this thing look? And so the things that I think remain behind are the things that are utilitarian objects that have lost their utility, but they still look good. They look like, wow, why did they do that? And so that's a lot of what this collection is. And so it looks like it's a bunch of machines, but it's really a bunch of unusual, carefully made machines that have attributes that are beyond their utilitarian nature. And I was trying to communicate that to engineers here. I don't think I was successful at it, but I tried, and I'm still trying. And I think, big part of being an engineer, if you want to leave some place, leave some mark in the world, make something that looks cool. It can't just do a job,
Right. And there's so much we can learn from the way that people thought, We kind of explored that earlier with different machines.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the other thing I was trying to communicate is we're living at where we live is based on 300 years of people trying to, in an evolutionary way, make things faster, better, cheaper, all those things. And we're the beneficiary of all that stuff. And we don't realize that how easy it is to live with all that inertia that was put into the system before we got here.
Right. Is there an intentional order of the way that things are displayed throughout the museum?
A little bit, but not too much. I mean, this stuff in here is it's sort of like machining in general. This hall in here is machining. This room in here is like really unusual objects that were made for some strange purpose that I'd never seen before, and so I collected them because of that. Or there were unique objects in the world. There's like that machine to make drills. That's the only one. That's a prototype machine. So that's really a rare thing. And so machines get in this part of the thing because they're really weird. And then this stuff over on the wall there, those are tools that a cooper would use when they're making barrels. So, you've never seen those before. You've never seen anybody make a barrel. It's really a skilled thing because when you make a barrel, it's all curved and it can't leak and all that stuff. So there's a whole a set of tools that are required to do that. And they would have been lost if I hadn't saved them. Somebody would have just thrown them in the garbage, but I got them before they got there. Yeah.
I love that. How do you? I mean, we were in the other building before with a piece of a hotel roof on it. Like, I guess is the intent for you is obviously personal, but also to share the beauty, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's beautiful. Some other people get it. Lots of people don't. It doesn't matter. Some people get it, and for them, I think it resonates. Yeah.
And otherwise, these pieces would just be lost. Like you said, they'd be burned down or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, they melt them down and recycle them and turn into a pop tin or something.
The first step of the museum here we were walking through is you mentioned it's relatively new for you, I believe, which is the African medals.
Yeah, so I started on that about probably 15 years ago, and I was buying stuff, and I got the idea that this is, I just like the look of it, so that was why I was buying. It's made out of metal, looks like a cool thing. I might want to touch it and grab it and turn it and look at it. So I start buying them, and then I'm buying some counterfeit stuff, so I start trying to study on it more. And then I find this guy who really knows a lot about it, and it's the time of the AIDS epidemic, and I'm thinking, you know, some of this stuff is like absolutely unique in the universe. Great effort has been expended in making it, and some creepy guy is going to somebody who's sick in Africa and buying it and bringing it over here, and he's just essentially a bandit that's paying the minimum at one end and whatever he can get at the other end. So I said, we got to do something about that. So I get this guy who really knows a lot about it, and we decide we've got a strategy. We're going to get stuff that we think tells the story in a coherent way, and then we start executing that strategy. And a good part of the story is we decide we're going to pay the same price we were paying in Santa Fe when we buy this stuff. So if we buy something in Africa, people are having to sell this. They're not selling this stuff because they want to get rid of it. They're selling it because this is the only thing they've got of value and they're sick. So we don't think it's fair to take advantage of that situation. So we said, okay, well, how much were you paying for that thing in Santa Fe? That's probably the market price, so pay them that. So people in that part of the world that experienced our interactions think we're all really stupid in Canada, because we'd say, how much you want for that? The guy say, $15. We'd say, well, how about 250? So it was like our own foreign aid project for a while. And, it was fun doing and learned a lot along the way. And but it's kind of finished now. There's not, we had a plan to get a certain group of objects to tell a story, and we've got them now, and it would be rare that we don't have that. It would be rare that we're missing something. Yeah.
Are there certain pieces, regardless of kind of the era or the location that you'd put them in, that you have your eye on that you don't yet have?
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff around that I'd like to get. I mean, the steam engine in here weighs about 60 tons, and so it's big horizontal engine out of a woolen mill over there. And there's a really beautiful machine that I've been haggling on for probably close to 20 years now. It's in Bristol, and the Bristol Waterworks own it, and it's a vertical steam-driven water pump, and it's about 80 feet high and about 60 feet long, and it weighs about 400 tons, so it's quite a bit bigger than this one. And it's probably one of the beautiful objects on the planet. It's being the top the top 100 for sure. So, but the problem with it is it's got asbestos on it. So they'll give me the thing because they want the building that it's in, but I don't want to touch the asbestos, because if you get into asbestos in a place like England, you might never get unstuck from it. So I say to them, why don't you take the asbestos off, and then I'll come and take it out. And they say to me, why don't you take it off and we'll give it to you. So that's been going on for a long time now. Still haven't crossed the border. So I'd like to get it. If I got it, there's a place to put it here, and I would get it all set up. But I don't know if I'll get it or not.
You'd have to build a whole new building around that then, correct?
Yeah, we set this up so I can go out on the side of the hill there, and it can get bigger if we want.
Oh, so it's designed to be a continuation, should it?
Yeah, but go out sort of this way into the side of another hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Right on. What's the long-term plan with this space?
Probably isn't one. I mean, I'll leave it well enough funded that, some kind of mission will continue. What I think is usually a good part of the attraction of these things is the quirkiness of the person that put it together. And so, like if you look at the Glenbow now and you say, well, what did Eric Harvey have in mind when they started off doing that? I don't think there's it's hard to find Eric Harvey in that place. So, I mean, no disparaging thing against the Glenbow. I think it's an amazing place. But is the ghost of Eric Harvey there? Not so much. And so this is the same thing. This is, my interest, my stuff. I didn't get any advice on what I put in here. I put in what I thought was cool. And after I'm gone, the next guy won't think it's so cool. So that's okay.
As long as it's fun to you.
The joy was in the thing, yeah, and getting it and figuring out how to make sure that it was durably preserved. Yeah.
Amazing. Are you ever approached about some of the things that you've collected in here, about bringing them elsewhere or purchasing or maybe moving to another museum or anything like that?
The African stuff traveled, so it went around a bit because other people, it was a good enough collection that, it's as good as anybody's collection, I think. And so we traveled around a bit. Machines are too big to travel around. Every now and then somebody like car or something might go around, electric cars, everybody, the Tesla guys are all, they're having things. So sometimes the car shows up somewhere.
Amazing. What is your personal, I'm sure this is a complicated question, but your personal, prized possession, most prized possession?
I don't know if I really got one or not. They all have a unique place in my mind. And I don't think you rank them by the amount of joy. They all give me joy and pleasure when I look at them or when I touch them or when I do something with them. It sounds kind of creepy. So. But I don't think there's a ranking of joy. It's either yes or no. It's really hard to have a joy index, I think. So.
Yeah, awesome. With all the things that you have going on, how do you choose to manage your time?
So I'm lucky because I'm completely self-directed. So no one's coming in, except for my wife, no one can make me do anything. So I have the normal family restrictions, but other than that, my commercial, my working, my fun part of my life is completely self-directed. I'm a loner. I'm an only child. I haven't been around. I don't like being around people. I just assume to be by myself if I can. And so I've separated my life out. I've learned to separate it out. There's a tactical component of your life. And those are things where you have to be responsive to external pressures and external demands, and people are phoning you and asking for an answer. And you have to give them an answer, and you have to be expeditious in the way that you do that. I separate my life into that part, and then there's another part that's strategic. And the strategic issues are all uncertain, nebulous. There's no numbers that you can put numbers on them, but you're probably wrong on the numbers when you make them up. If you had a bad donut in the morning, the numbers probably change. So, they're just difficult, intractable issues. And a lot of the stuff I work on, I call it working on the edge of the earth. And so my business philosophy is the earth's flat, way out on the edge. Things are unbelievably cheap. You can buy a lot on the edge of the earth for like 15 cents. Sometimes you could convert that lot into the best lot in town with your intellect and with your focus and with your way to do it. And so I work out there a lot, but I have to be really careful about how I devote those things, because once you start, you're on the journey, and it's really hard to not be on the journey once you get going. So the strategic part of my life is trying to sort those things out and trying to think about where's the world going to be 10 or 15 years from now? How can you position yourself today at very low cost, very low holding cost? How can you own that piece of dirt, whatever it is, in the future? Yeah. And you can't fall off the edge of the earth.
So how do you identify those opportunities? Is it just keeping your finger on the pulse, like the buying the lot at the edge of the world?
We have enormous subject matter knowledge, I would say, between, there's like 3 or 4 of us that work together. We have enormous subject matter knowledge of finance, engineering, how the world works, what the world needs, all those things, particularly in the energy space. I would say meager knowledge in other places, but in the energy space, very deep, broad knowledge. We're able to see things that other people, I don't think, see as well as we do. Carbon sequestration is a good example of that. So we went into that business. It was like, I think we started that business, it's called Enhance, 2004. Okay, and the idea was, we work with Pan Canadian. They did a project called Weyburn in Saskatchewan, and we were involved in that as an owner. We bought some of it, and we were a significant owner there. And essentially, they brought CO2 up from North Dakota to Saskatchewan, put CO2 in the ground, and oil came out. And you're thinking, holy shit, this is like these reservoirs. That reservoir was discovered in 1954. Pan Canadian's putting CO2 in it in 2002. it goes back to its original productivity when it was found. So, it was like, wow, there's a lot of oil down there. So we started thinking, I wonder why no one's doing that in Alberta. And what happens with CO2 is most of the CO2 we make is made by combustion. So I take 10 parts of air, 1 part of fuel, burn them. Now I've got 10 parts of nitrogen in the CO2 that comes out. So I've got 10 parts nitrogen, 1 part CO2. Really expensive to separate the CO2 out. I can't use the CO2, I can't move it unless it's pure. So it has to be pure to make it into a liquid so I can transport it. So there was none of that activity in Alberta, even though we had wonderful reservoirs here. There was no EOR activity because the CO2 was contaminated and it was too expensive to clean it up. So we started thinking, well, Christ, if you could have pure CO2, that'd be really cool because we could put it in all these old reservoirs. We think there's 1 billion barrels of oil in the central part of the province that would come out with CO2. So I started thinking, well, why can't we do that? And at the same time we were doing that, we're thinking, why isn't there an oil refinery in Alberta? This is stupid. Like, we got all this oil, people are shipping it to Texas and they're saying they can refine it down there better than we can. I think that's not the way the world works. We're as smart as anybody else. So we decided to build a refinery, and we decided to make the refinery configured in a way where it made pure CO2 right from the get-go. And normally people make their hydrogen from natural gas. We made it from the bottom of the worthless part of the oil barrel, and we made CO2 and hydrogen. When we did that, it was a little bit more expensive than making hydrogen from natural gas, but we ended up with pure CO2. So the idea was, well, okay, we'll start another business and we'll take that CO2 and use it for enhanced oil recovery. So when we were doing that, this is like 15 years ago, longer than that, it's like 2004 when the idea was we were thinking about it. Everybody's saying to me, oh, what are you doing? That CO2, that's like a flash in the pan. That's not going to be a big deal. That's just some, academic thing. Don't be thinking about that. You're wasting money. Look at how much it's costing more. You can't afford to do that. So I just, I got a hearing aids. I turned them off and kept going. So today we're putting about 4,000 tons of CO2 in the ground every day. We put about 4 million tons out there. I think the value of that in the world that we're in is probably like $300 a ton. So 300 times 4,000 is a lot of money. And that's just because we had the courage of our convictions. And am I talking too much? Is it?
No,
okay,
no, please.
So the courage of my convictions was, I'm talking to my kids. They're young at this point. They're still in high school or something. Every time I talk to them, they're talking about, something to do with climate change, global warming. And then there's all these old guys around like me saying, oh, that's all nonsense. We don't believe that stuff. It just could be, maybe not. We don't know. The kids are all saying, we believe in this stuff. And we're getting educated on it. I'm thinking, Christ, 20 years from now, those people are the people driving the car. It's not a bunch of old guys like me anymore. All these guys that think that this is happening, believe it. So they're going to pay something for it. We ought to position ourselves to be at the door when that starts happening. And so, it took 20 years to happen, but I think it's completely obvious now.
Yeah, no doubt. And you said it's the only one in the entire world, correct?
It's the only refinery configured from the get-go to make CO2 a manageable product.
Wow. And that's just purely based on your foresight to recognize that that's going to be the future.
Yeah, you don't want to sound smarter than you are, right? It's like, I think this was obvious. I think as soon as you started talking to elementary school kids, junior high kids, and senior high kids, and they're all saying the same thing, this is a problem, and you're thinking, no, it isn't, you're not getting it. Like 20 years from now, they're going to be driving the car and you're going to be sitting in the back seat. It doesn't matter what you think. Shut up and get with the program.
Wow. Was this always something that this foresight, to recognize when there's an opportunity? Would you say that was ingrained in a young age?
I think I was encouraged to look, encouraged to think in a way that, my mom said it best when she said to me, just because someone tells you that you can't do something, don't pay any attention to that. They're talking about themselves. They're not talking about you. So you have to decide what you're going to do yourself. You have to direct and you have to look for it. And you're responsible for the consequences. If it doesn't work, it's your fault. It's nobody else's. Don't try and figure out who to blame it on. Look in the mirror.
You said you've been working with the same group of people for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How did you originally come together to form what you do?
So
long time ago, one of the guys I worked with was my lawyer. He worked at Ben & Jones. He was a partner, one of the smartest guys on the planet. Kind of weird like I am. Probably didn't fit in the Ben & Jones any better than I would have fit working for an oil company. So we kind of joined up and started. The young guy joined us. He's 40 years old now. He's been with us 15, 16 years now. Same thing, kind of different than the place that he was, not that great a fit. And then the other guy who's with us is an old Shell guy, and he'd been working at Shell for 30 years and then left, and he helped me build the refinery, so he was a genius behind that and knew a lot. And then one other guy started out here when he was a summer student, so I was looking for somebody to cut the lawn out here, and he was about 14, so his mom, she brought him over, but she interviewed me to see if I was going to be an okay place to work for this summer. So he's the guy who's in charge of this business that we're working on right now, and he's worked with me in different things for, he's 40 now, so 25 years. Yeah.
How important is it to get the right people on the bus? When there's always so many ideas and there's so many things so many directions that you can go with what you want to do. How important is the right people?
It's the only thing. It's the only thing that makes any difference. If you have intensity and you have a reasonable intellect, I don't think there's any really great ideas. I think there's okay ideas in good hands or crappy hands. A crappy idea in good hands is way, way better than a great idea in crappy hands. So we always, we're looking for people that are committed, that, when they take on a job, they're going to die trying to do it. And we're all the same in that attribute, I would say. And we're relentless. We just keep trying stuff. If something doesn't work, it's like the Roomba business plan. You just go until you bump into something, the thing backs up. Just keep, eventually you'll get around it, but you don't know how, you just have to keep trying.
Right. You were born in Alberta, and you're still in Alberta, and there's got to be a reason behind that.
Yeah, I've worked all over the world. So, I worked in South America when things were bad here with the National Energy Program. I went down there and we built bunch of stuff in Peru. So I have worked out of the place. We used to own the world's largest deepwater drilling rig. So that was bought from some Norwegian guys and worked off the East Coast. So we worked there. I just think this is the greatest place in the world. I don't think you can find any better, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you want to build stuff and try and do stuff differently and try and make a fortune doing it, and you're motivated in that way. I just don't think there's a better place in the world to do it. It's opportunity rich. The people here encourage that, so you'll find other guys who've done the same thing you're trying to do in a different place. They'll encourage you. Some of them will even give you money because they feel sorry for you or something, and they'll help out wherever they can. And it's just a wonderful environment for that.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? I agree with you. I think there's so many amazing people here that just genuinely want to help and are business minded and that sort of thing. But what kind of factors do you think contribute to that?
I think it starts off, it's a really tough agricultural environment, and that's the basis for the economy. So people come here, and agriculture is tough here. The bad climate, bad soil. Some places it's okay, but generally, I'd rather be in Saskatchewan or Minnesota than here if I'm a farmer. So tough, marginal, everything. That makes you really tough. That makes you, you just don't complain about everything, you just do stuff. So that's sort of the base level of a good part of our society. And then all of a sudden in 1947, we find Leduc. And this is like this enormous source of opportunity that just reaches forward today. Different variants of that are through everywhere today. There's this enormous opportunity, and the opportunity is some element of gambling. So it's like, I drove one of these things and 10 of them are dusters, and then one of them is like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. This is Eric Harvey, like, holy Christ, how'd that happen? So every now and then that happens, and encourages people that, everybody wants to buy some kind of lottery ticket. And so it encourages that sort of lottery ticket, but at the fundamental base level of that, it's this really tough, persistent approach to life that is founded on the agricultural nature of the place. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's like Saskatchewan with opportunity.
Fair enough. Yeah. You talked a little bit about this before, but I'm intrigued in diving a little bit deeper. The projects that you decide to work on, what's your criteria? What's your process for doing that?
Oh, we get an idea. Usually it's something missing. So we're saying there's something missing here. It doesn't look right. It looks like it's going to be missing. Looks like it's going to be more missing, and it's going to get increasingly rationed over time. And is that a good or a bad thing? That would be sort of the start of the process, I would say. So then you look at it and you say, so refinery is a good example. We look at it and we say, all these people, they're talking about Keystone back then. We're going to ship all the oil to Texas. You can't do that in Alberta. It's too expensive. People don't know how to do it here. There's all these refineries in the States. We're just going to build a pipe down there and ship it all down there. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think that. I think we should do all that stuff here. Christ, all these things pay taxes. They keep people working. They're good jobs, and the stuff that comes out of them is worth 2.5 times what you put into it. Surely somebody must be able to do that here. So that's the start of it. And then we keep checking it out, and it turns out, yeah, some of that's true, and some of it, you're talking about stuff you don't know anything about. You better study some more. So as you get into it, it's not like there's not some flash of inspiration. It's like, hey, that could be cool. Why don't we go and look into it? And then you look into it a bit, and it's like, that's not so cool. That ain't going to work. But you didn't know it until you became a half-assed subject matter, not an expert, but a subject matter knowledgeable. And then if you keep as you accumulate the knowledge, stuff that's on the periphery of your requirement from other places, because our experience is so broad, we can see, when you're my age, you can see your hand when it's back here. When you're your age, you can see it here. But you're way slower when you're back here. I'm way slower than you are, but I can see stuff that you don't see. So when we look at these things now, our experience is so broad, and we've done so many different things. We can see stuff that might get you, or might be an opportunity that other people don't see. And then when we see that, sometimes that can convert into the commercial opportunity that we're after. But there's never ever a flash of inspiration. That doesn't happen with what we do. It's small, incremental. Try this, try that. Try something else, and you'll find out all kinds of stuff, and that'll inform your view about where to go.
Awesome. So it really stems with curiosity, then.
You have to be curious. Yeah, you have to enjoy that process. I got a picture, my favorite picture in the world. You know Alexander Mackenzie?
I don't.
So he's like an explorer. He's like the head of the Hudson's Bay Company. He's sitting in Montreal. Somehow he gets the idea, I'm going to be the first person to go to the west coast of Canada by land. So he packs up all his shit and heads out. And he's in Montreal, right? No one's ever going to do it. No one's ever gone to the west coast before. He just takes off and does it. And for sure there was no plan. For sure, I mean, they packed up some canoes and shit, put whatever they thought they needed in them. But for sure there was uncharted territory along the route, and huge amounts of it. He gets to the west coast of Canada. He writes on a rock out there, Alexander Mackenzie by land from Canada, 1735 or something. I'm thinking, that's the way I want to live.
Endlessly curious. Love it. That's funny because I've, you hint at exploration, and I've heard you described as a modern day explorer. What does that mean to you?
It means that you're in an opportunity-rich environment, but the opportunities aren't obvious, and you have to find them, you have to catch them, and you have to recognize them. And a lot of them don't look like opportunities; they look like problems or something. And so you have to have a mindset that says, I enjoy that process. All problems are the same. There's no good ones and there's no bad ones. They're just problems. Once you get into them, they're all good. They're fun to solve. So you have to have, if you haven't got that approach to life, you probably shouldn't do the kind of work that I do. I mean, I love that when things are, I don't like it when they're going wrong, but I like it when they're fixed.
Great. Awesome. Motivation is obviously super important, especially when you're doing, the amount of things that you do and keeping all these different things running. What's if you were to identify one or two things that keep you going personally, what would they be?
Is it fun or not? If it's fun, it's like all people who do these kind of activities are the same. Somebody painting a picture, they're painting it not for the money of the picture. They're painting it for the fun of painting the picture. And once the picture's finished, they couldn't give a shit about it. It's like, well, got to sell this thing and get some money to do the next picture, but it's about the next picture. It's not about what I did. It's about the journey. All the time is the journey. The journey, is it fun? Is it important? Does it keep me? Is there something to discover on that journey? Or is it, am I doing the same goddamn thing I did last year? Then how do I get out of it is what I'm thinking.
How do you, like that, I love that outlook, and I think that's something that's missing in most people, you know? Do you see that, or do you find that people are following their passion usually?
I think you have to do a lot to know, people talk about young people following their passions. I don't think you got enough peripheral vision to start to know what you should be passionate about. I think you have to try some pretty in-depth experiments before you know. And then along the way, you'll find out what really is fun. And then you're able to pursue it. And I think if you try and pick what's fun too early, you probably make a bad choice. So I think you have to be prepared to have some things that don't work out, that you don't like, and you learn from them. And then you find some things that you do like and you start doing them. And I think the other thing that happens is, and especially in the modern world where you can't have too many financial commitments. Most of us don't have any. I mean, I started off with no money, so you can't have financial commitments that are bigger than what you can afford, or pretty soon the financial commitments dominate what you can do. And so then you're really stuck because you realize, I don't like doing this. Well, I got to pay for the house, and I got to pay for the car, and I got to pay for whatever, and I don't have the flexibility that comes with a meager lifestyle, I'll say. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's super relevant to, that's society, the society that we live in. It's, buy the next thing and be in debt so that you can, work for the next thing.
Yeah.
How did you first learn that, that freedom is so important to be able to find the fun, passionate things that you want to do?
I think, I came from meager means but never knew it, so I was well looked after and well able to do things, but we were meager means. And then I went into a business that was like, I started off not knowing anything about business. I didn't know what an invoice was when I started. And so we just had zero money, and everything was like right at the margin all the time. So you had training to be, I just can't afford to do this. I'm going to go broke if all those things were forming that your sort of base level of who you are. And so once you got that at the base, then it's like, well, that's just part of who you are. Yeah.
Did business come naturally to you when you first started?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I shot pool for a living when I was a kid. So when I was in university, I was a good enough pool player, I could make enough money to pay for university once I got going. And so I think that is kind of like, it's not just about how good a pool player you are, it's how much you can upset the other people you're playing with. And so part of that practice is the same thing that goes on in business, not upsetting them, but understanding who they are and adapting to, and I think that's a big part of being successful in business, is understanding what the other guy needs and how you fit around that and not upsetting him.
Yeah, the opposite. Do you still play?
No, my eyes went, so I can't play worth a shit anymore.
What does success look like to you?
I think it's about happiness. Are you happy? You're smiling most of the time. Like I walk down the street, probably only 1 out of 10 people is smiling. The rest of them are frowning, walking around all the time. Maybe that's just natural, but I think most of the time I got a smile on my face and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And if I'm not, I'm thinking, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? This is no fun.
Do you have a process to determine kind of when you're not having fun? I find some people get sucked into doing something just based on routine or habit or something like that. Is there something that you put the brakes on? You're like, whoa, hold on, this isn't fun anymore.
I'm super sensitive to it, so I know if I'm in a situation where I think, well, this situation is not, it's not fun right now, and it's looking like it's going to be less fun in the future. I'm getting out of this situation, and so I'm not doing this. Or there's some part of the thing that's so much fun that I can tolerate this unfun stuff. So we all can't have the perfect fun life, but the balance of fun to non-fun has to be commensurate with your ability to act. And so I'm very cognizant of that.
Yeah, awesome. What's next? You know, you've got a lot of things on the go. I'm curious as to how, you know, we talked about your process of determining what's next, but what do you have going on the go right now, and what do you see, you know, unfolding in the next couple of years?
So we're working right now. So we think the next frontier is in terms of commercial frontier anyway. So we think that the world has gone to a place where we've put so much CO2 in the atmosphere that we can't reduce our emissions quickly enough to make any difference. So people are talking about, you know, how do I quit burning fuel? How do I make battery-powered cars? How do I make electric hydrogen airplanes and all this stuff? It's total nonsense. It's orders of magnitude more expensive than what we're doing today. It won't happen because it's so expensive. So we're going to have to figure out a way to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. And so CO2 in the atmosphere is like, if you got little kids and you take them swimming and they pee in the swimming pool, that's what you're trying to get out of the atmosphere. That is really, really, you can do it, but it's really hard and really expensive. And hard means the machines are complicated, they take a lot of energy, an enormous amount of electricity to run the machines, and they take a lot of water. People forget about how much water I need in these machines to do it. So we started thinking, well, it's pretty obvious to us that 20 years from now, somebody's going to figure out a way to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. And the biggest problem is you start at 400 parts per million. So that's what's in the atmosphere today. And somehow I got to get that up to 100% pure CO2 before I can move it around and put it underground somewhere. So we started thinking, you know, how are you going to do that? We decided there's a machine that's already doing that. It's working really effectively all over the place. It's called a tree. It's solar powered. It runs off the water that's floating around in the universe. If there's no water there, the tree dies and it pops up somewhere else. So you start with a tree. Canada has 8 or 9% of the world's trees, and the US has about the same. So there's 16% of the world's trees are in North America. They take the carbon that's in the atmosphere, the 400 parts per million, and they make it into about 25 or 30% carbon in the tree. When we cut down a forest in North America, we're primarily cutting it down for lumber. There isn't a pulp business here anymore. It doesn't make sense to make pulp in Canada. It's uneconomic. And so that's where the low value fiber used to go to pulp. And it also used to go, we just leave it behind in the forest. Sometimes we burn it, we call it slash, and sometimes we just leave it there and it rots, but it all returns to the atmosphere. So we decided that's feedstock. We can make that high carbon material, we can make it into something because there's a lot of energy in it. So we can convert the high carbon, low value wood fiber into hydrogen and into pure CO2. And we know how to sequester pure CO2 because we've done that before and understand all the steps in the process. And we also know about hydrogen because the process we used in the refinery to make hydrogen is called gasification. And we know everything about that process because it didn't work when we got it and we had to fix it. So we decided we can make a wood gasifier. We're just going to gasify this low value wood fiber. The tree's going to take the CO2 out of the air. We're going to sequester the CO2 and we're going to get hydrogen out of the energy that's in the tree. And then we can use that hydrogen to put in other things that are very difficult to decarbonize. But the attributes of the tree, the carbon capturing attributes of the tree remain in the hydrogen because we took the carbon and put it underground. So the hydrogen we make is not carbon neutral, it's carbon negative. So when you put that in a normal refinery in the front end, then you buy down the carbon intensity of all the stuff that comes out of the refinery and make it less damaging to the world. So we're working on that. We think we can change the world on this one. We think this is really cool because we think there's places we designed a standard plant. We think there's places for 5,000 of those plants in North America. We think there's scrap feedstock for 5,000 of them. And we think we know how to build them. And we're going to build them like a rooftop air conditioner. So it doesn't look like a refinery. It's going to look like it comes out of a factory. It's finished. We take it out and bolt it down and start it up. And we think we get the cost down to a point where we can do all of this for about $100 a ton. That's our objective, is to get carbon out of the atmosphere and sequestered for $100 a ton. And if we can do that, then we'll be geniuses.
No doubt, no doubt. Beyond identifying the opportunity, making it happen. Wow.
Yeah, and so, I mean, who knows? It's another forest. We're in there, or we think there's food in there, and we're hunting for it.
Is this it's an incredible idea. How long have you been working on it?
A couple of years now.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, we're lucky because we can pursue ideas like that without looking for outside funding. So most of the people that, you know, they have to figure out where they're going to get the money. The ideas sound crazy. Most ideas are crazy at the start, and you have to, you know, keep evolving the idea. And so we're lucky because we can have a reasonable, I would say a reasonable financial commitment to the thing to try and figure this out. So, you know, so far we probably spent $5 million on it. And we think we got a really okay idea now, and we think we can execute the idea we got. So we're excited about it.
No doubt. What's the timeline? Do you have one?
Want to have the first one in operation, and we're trying to build them. So really, a lot of the problem with these things is like the transition world is everybody comes up with all these ideas, and the ideas are mostly science experiments. So I have to do all the stuff that's involved in a science experiment before I can actually get the idea. And then when I get the idea proven up, then I can start building multiple copies of that idea. But there's a big science experiment, and most science experiments fail because they're experiments, right? So maybe 99 out of 100 fail, one worked. So what we do is we look for things that we know how to do it. There's no science experiment of it. We can convert it. And what we've decided is you can take a lot of the cost out by picking a size where you think you can build multiple repeated copies of the same thing. And so our approach is we know about manufacturing. That's something, you know, is in our expertise. So what we want to do is we're going to manufacture these things. We're not going to make them like an oil refinery where there's a big construction project. It's going to be, we're making a rooftop air conditioner. It's bigger, but that's what it is. And the whole approach is it's finished when it comes out of that factory. I'm just plugging the pieces together and starting it up. And so we want to have a reference plant so we can show everybody how it works. You can bring your operators and train it, and then we'll sell off that reference plant, and that'll be in Alberta. And I also believe that we're starting a new industry in Alberta that's going to be, like, we think there's thousands of these things to build. Each one's probably, I don't know, if we get to $100 a ton, that's $300 million a copy. So, you know, if there was 1,000 of 300 million, that's pretty good business. And we think we can build some of the size of a car company in Edmonton making these things, and that's really the ultimate goal.
Wow. And we talked about Alberta a little bit earlier, but is there an intentional reason why you've chosen to do your manufacturing and everything here as well?
So when we built the refinery, we spent, I don't know, I'll say 75 million man hours of labor on that refinery. So, you know, we had a lot of interactions with labor. What happens in Alberta, we've got this reputation for everything being really expensive and really unproductive and really hard to do. And usually we blame that on the people actually doing this stuff. And it's completely misallocation of the blame. Usually what happens is you start building one of these things, you don't know what you're building, so you just make up an idea. I'm building an oil refinery. How much is it going to cost? You get the smartest people you can in the room, you say, I don't know, how much did that one cost? Okay, well, it's about something like that. Then you start doing the engineering on it and the design. And as you start doing the engineering, you decide, well, Christ, I can't wait till the engineering's finished. I got to start building something. So I start building and engineering at the same time. So the poor people that are building it, they're not getting anything as complete in any way. They're just getting like, here's a partially completed thing, start building this and we'll tell you the rest of the stuff when we get it. And then we've got this process we call modularization. So we build these things, they're 20 by 20 by 100 feet long. We build them and then we take them out to the field and plug them all together. It's supposed to be the idea. So in the refinery we built, there was 1,150 of those modules, 1,152 modules. And there was 7,000 pieces of equipment that cost more than $100,000 in it. So I got a compressor, it's in the middle of a module. The module's all finished and there's 1,000 people out in the field that are putting up modules, but the piece of equipment isn't here. What do? They're waiting for this thing to put it in. So I take it out there before it's finished and I put it in. Now the piece of equipment that I got to put in the middle of it comes 2 months late. I got to figure out how the hell to get it into there, and guess what? That didn't cost as much as it did when it was in the shop. So then we blame that on all the productivity of our labor. We say, well, those labor guys, they don't know how to build this stuff. You can do it way cheaper in China. Well, no, you can't. It's just you misallocated the responsibility. So what we think is you got to build this stuff like a car. You got to have all this stuff. Before you start in the car, you got to have all this stuff. And if you don't have the door handles, you don't start putting the engine in because, you know, when you get down to the end, you're still going to need the door handles. So we're going to do this differently. It's not modularization. It's, it's manufacture. We have to manufacture these things to get the cost down. We think we know how to do that, and we will. Yeah.
Amazing.
Am I on a rant? Christ, sometimes I feel like
No,
my answers are too
it's
long.
fascinating. Not at all. No, this is incredible. You mentioned earlier too that you always learn something from a previous business and to bring into the next one.
Yeah.
Is that something that's always, is that something that you document? Is it something, this is what I learned from this and this is what I'm going to take into the next one? What does that process look like for you?
No, I mean, I'm short on documentation and everything. I hate documentation, and I used to try and have all these diaries, and you'd write notes in there. And I realized when I was writing the notes, I wasn't learning what was going on in the meeting. I was focusing on the notes, so I just quit it. I don't have any diary. I don't have any notes. I never take notes on anything. If it's not in here, it wasn't important. So there's no process of documentation. I mean, what I think is, if you're really interested in everything, you will remember. And a lot of times you don't remember stuff because you weren't interested. And so I try and focus my life on things that I'm really interested in. And I know when I'm not interested, and I get out quick if I'm not interested. Yeah.
Incredible. Has there ever been, you're in the business of problem solving, realistically. Has there ever been a problem where you've either been stumped to a point of, you don't want to continue, or something that you couldn't solve, or anything like that?
So when we built the refinery, so there's a thing called a gasifier in the refinery, and the gasifier has three big parts to it. So there's a reactor where there are chemical reactions that are going to make the hydrogen and CO2 occur, and in that reactor is a burner that's the start of all that. So you've got these three things where the reaction's occurring. Two of them are active and under operation, and one is on hot standby. So when the burner fails in one of the ones you've got running, you just turn the third one on, and then you just keep going, and then you can change this burner out and put a new burner in, then you can, so you're continuously operating. And there's no way you could run a refinery where it runs and then you shut it off and then start back up again. That would just be that's an economic disaster. So we buy the part of the refinery that does all this from somebody who's supposed to know what they're doing. We get it all built. We spent, at this point, about $11 billion, way over budget, multiple of what we originally thought, almost twice as much as what we originally thought. We go to start it up, and the burner in these three systems, each one's supposed to last 2,000 hours. So we turn it on, it lasts 40 hours. So we're thinking, holy shit, this is bad. Then we turn on the second one, and it lasts 40 hours. And then so we realize the burners are only going to last 40 hours. So we go back and talk to the guys who designed it, and we spend, going back and forth. They're in Europe, I'm going back and forth to talk to them all the time. Finally decide, I don't think these guys are going to be able to get us out of this problem. Like, this is really bad. And I've never seen a problem like this in my life. Like, the burner's like this big. It's got the same amount of energy going through it as two 747 engines on takeoff. It's like off the charts on everything you've ever seen in your normal life. There's never been anything like this before. So we start trying to figure it out. So I get the smartest group of guys I can find. These are all like really smart farmers, but they're farmers at heart, right? They're the guy's a PhD in computer flow design, but he's a farmer. And so there's half a dozen of these guys. So we start working on this problem. And a couple times in there, I think, Jesus, the numbers that you need are so daunting. You just think, I'm gonna have to change my name and move to California because this ain't gonna work. But we apply our same approach to it. And the kid who started off with me when he was 15 out here, he turns out, he's an engineer, and he turns out, he's a really, really smart, off the chart manufacturing guy. So it turns out that when you build this thing, you have to control the tolerances. You've got a water jacket, and the velocity of the water going through the jacket sets how much it cools everything. So you can keep the thing cool from burning up if the velocity through this chamber is high enough and controlled enough. But if the chamber gets a little bit too wide, then the velocity goes down and the thing burns up right away. So that's what was happening with the other ones. So we figured this out. We got to make this thing, and we're welding it together, and it's shrinking about 6 millimeters. We have to control the tolerance in this big open space within 1/10 of a millimeter, just about the size, I think it's about the size of 1/4 of a human hair. We have to control this tolerance to. And if we get half a human hair, it burns up immediately. So he figures out how to weld this goddamn thing together. No one else in the world has ever welded like this. He figures out how to do it, and then all the other stuff works. All the numbers that we've been calculating work. So he eventually figures out how to do this and build this thing. And when we're finished, the burner now lasts 10,000 hours. When you take it out and look at it, you're thinking, well, Christ, there's no point in replacing it, just put it back in. So, I mean, it's absolutely unique in the world, and that is the worst problem I have seen. I'm 75 now. 75 years, that's the worst problem I've ever seen.
What was the pressure like when you were dealing with that problem?
Well, there was a bit of pressure.
I can imagine.
They used to write an article about me at least once a month, sometimes once a week, saying, Ian is a really bad guy. He talked the government into building this refinery. It's never going to make money. It doesn't work. It's way over budget. We would never do it. All those people, there's guys like Ted Morton and that guy in the Herald, what is his name? All those guys, the energy reporter, all these people, they said it would never work. They said it would never make money. They said it was a dumb idea. We're not hearing much from him now, I don't think. But it was bad there, really bad for a while.
Yeah, right on. I love that. I mean, does every single one of your endeavors kind of get bigger in nature? It sounds like that's kind of been the progression.
You're able to do bigger things because you have the credibility to do it. And if the things that you've done have worked out, there's I can go to see people now and say, hey, we want to do this. And they know that it's a well-conceived commercial idea. When I ask somebody for money, they know that its commercial conception is robust. Yeah. Now, I'm getting pretty old, so they look at me and say, well, how are we going to get it done? So, I mean, I work with guys that are 40 years old. They're well able to do what I did.
Do you find that was a challenge on the earlier years? If you've always had these big ideas, but never, never maybe had the opportunity to prove yourself on your first or second or third endeavor?
Part of being an entrepreneur is to be able to work in that environment and figure out how do you get if you don't have enough credibility, how do you borrow some from somebody else to support your own mission? And then if you deliver, you get to do more, and every time you do one, you hopefully can do a bigger one.
If you were to give advice to any, young entrepreneurs, there's lots of that have incredible ideas, that have incredible ideas that maybe they're not sure how to bring them to life, or maybe they're facing some sort of uncertainty. They don't have the belief they need. What would you say to them?
Do you like uncertainty? It's the first step. If you don't like it, if you're going to be waking up all the time in an uncertain world, you probably should try something else. Because the world's uncertain, it's unknowable, and you can figure some stuff out, and you can have a thorough, thoughtful plan to execute, and then the plan will always be wrong because uncertainty will always get you. So you have to like that feeling. If it's a likable feeling, you'll be okay. You'll figure it out, and the main things are you have to like that feeling, and you have to be persistent, and then you have to have okay ideas. You don't look for the greatest idea. And if an idea has a science experiment element to it, stay away from the goddamn thing, because the science experiments, there's only one moonshot. People are talking about moonshots all the time. There's only one, right? It's like, it happened 40 years ago. There hasn't been another moonshot since. They're all evolutionary. So if you're doing things that are in that category, unless you're a moonshot expert, don't do moonshots. And what I found is that people who are moonshot experts are almost impossible to work with, because they're so smart in one area, they're like 100 feet high. And the rest of us, the tallest person is like 6 foot and the shortest person is like 3 foot. Then there's these people who are moonshot experts that are like 100 feet high. And you think, holy crap, and they think I'm the smartest person on the earth. The problem is they're only half an inch wide. and they don't realize that they're half an inch wide, so they won't listen to you. If you they just think all other opinions are irrelevant. So when you work with them, they're almost impossible to do something with. So as soon as I meet them, it's like, I'm interested in learning what you know as much as someone like me can understand, but I never work with you. Yeah. So stay away from them if you're starting off.
Awesome. Ian, where can we send people to follow along what you're doing and that sort of thing? Is there do you write online or anything like that?
Usually, so we've got a website, Hydrogen Naturally is the business that we're working on right now, so that's going along okay. And then every now and then I put something on LinkedIn, so I got a LinkedIn place.
Perfect.
I'm with the programming.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for this. It's a pleasure being brought into your world and to what you do.
Okay, well, it's been fun, so thanks for hearing the story.
Thank you.